my time says me correct. Good afternoon, colleagues. I would like to welcome all of you for joining us for the launch of the book, Utilization of South African Research on Higher Education, which was edited by Professor Jan Botha and Gabriele Vilyte. My name is Temwa Moyo. I have the pleasure of chairing the session of this great book project. Would also like to thank SAAIR for including the book launch in their program, and the University of Free State for hosting us. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Professor Weber from the University of Georgia, the United States. Before we start off, let me outline the program, which is around 30 minutes. We will start off with the word from Professor Jan Botha on the book project. We will then have the keynote address from Professor Karen Weber. We will then invite Gabriele, the book's co-editor, for some comments after the keynote address. After that, we'll open the session for comments and questions, and then I'll have some parting remarks. Let me now hand over to Professor Jan Botha, who is the co-editor of the book, with a few words. Prof, over to you. Welcome.
I think we will share the video that Jan has prepared. Colleagues, can you see the video?
Not yet.
Let's see. Here we go.
Yes, we can see it now.
Hello, everyone. A book launch is ideally mostly about the ideas in a book, and perhaps also a little bit about the story behind the book. Well, that is, if it is an interesting story with a little bit of Skinner, a little bit of gossip in it. Of course, a launch is also an opportunity to acknowledge and to thank the people and organizations involved in the book. Other speakers will talk today about the ideas in the book, so I'll use the opportunity to thank the following people and organizations. Firstly, a warm word of thanks to Gabriele Vilyte, the co-editor of the book. Without her intellectual input and hard work, there would not have been a book. Thanks, Gabriele. The 12 co-authors, thanks very much for your creative ideas, careful research, and hard work over a long period of time. Alison Litwa, Ben Chabele, Gabriele Vilyte, Heidi Przedski, Herman Redlinghuis, Herman Visser, Jean-Claude Lemons, Wabona Ntebolong, Reshma Subayi, Ruda Wame, Paul Prinsloo, and Temwa Moyo. We want to thank the 3 reviewers, Peter Maassen, Rick Voorhees, and Ahmed Essel, as well as our academic advisors, Nelius Boshoff and Heidi Przedski from Crest at Stellenbosch University. We are grateful to the 2 major sponsors of the research. Firstly, SciSTIP, under leadership of Johan Mouton. SciSTIP is the NRF Center of Excellence in Scientometrics and Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. And also SAAIR, under the leadership of its last 3 presidents, Jean-Claude Lemons, Liz Archer, Xolisi Masango, and also Treasurer Herman Visser, supported by Karen Stradon. A warm word of thanks to the publisher, Sun Media, in particular Wikus van Zyl and Anina Joubert. Part of the publication costs was covered by the Senate Research Committee of Stellenbosch University, and we say thanks very much to Professor Eugene Klute, the TVC. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, this book is dedicated to Chrissy Bowie. As an intellectual scholar and practitioner, Chrissy's work is a model of and an embodiment of some of the main arguments that we're making in this book. You can read more about that in chapter 10. Thanks very much, SAAIR and Program Chair Matole Makele for including the launch in the annual conference program. And we will now proceed with the discussion of the ideas in the book. We look forward to listen to our keynote speaker, Karen Weber, from the University of Georgia in the United States.
Thank you so much, Prof Jan Botha, for those acknowledgements. But I think just before I hand over to Karen, it's also important to acknowledge you as the brainchild behind this book. As you note, this book is it's a partnership between seasoned researchers and young aspiring researchers. And this was to allow for diverse voices and authorship of the book. But before I take more of your time, let me hand over to Professor Karen Weber. Before she starts, just a brief on her. Professor Weber is based at the McBee Institute for Higher Education, University of Georgia in the United States. She's the current Vice President for AIR. Professor Weber has vast experience in institutional research, planning, data analytics, and also currently teaches in these areas. Professor Weber has also researched widely in higher education topics such as student success, data analytics, and higher education capacity building in IR, and institutional effectiveness, including global perspectives in institutional research. We are honored to be having Professor Weber joining us all the way from the United States. Let me now hand over to Karen for the keynote address. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Temwa. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, super. Well, super. Well, thank you so much, Temwa, for your kind, very kind introduction. And I agree. Great congratulations to Jan and to all of the others. Well, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you. I am very honored to be with you here. I wish we were all together in person, and I know we all look forward to travel soon and the personal interaction that comes with our traveling to conferences together. But here today, we'll do it through video chat, and I am honored to be able to share a few comments with you on the book. We're here to celebrate this new book on research utilization. Botha and Vilyte remind us that in 2004, Altbach and colleagues described the changes before higher education as a revolution. Yes, that's true, but in the years since 2004, we've seen additional change and historic events that have further prompted a revolution in higher education around the world. Indeed, COVID-19 has been the most recent disruptor, but even before this pandemic, historical events such as the dismantling of apartheid catapulted higher education institutions in Southern Africa into a period of great change. Today's higher education around the world is filled with some exciting and perhaps some stressful changes. This includes change in South Africa, and there are important issues that will benefit from interrogation for greater understanding. Among these are higher education's access to a greater diversity of students, considerations of students' tuition and fees, how to ensure quality education despite variations in preparedness, how to recruit and maintain vitality among academic staff, and how to ensure adequate levels of institutional funding. These are only a few of the topics, but they remind us of the need for continued research on higher education. In this book, Botha and Vilyte and colleagues have produced an impressive set of discussions on the ambitious topic of defining and describing the historical and current state of the utilization of research in higher education in South Africa, as well as some specific examples of higher education research done broadly, as well as through institutional research. I'm not sure if this was part of the motivation, but this book responds to Tefera and Altbach's suggestion for the need to grow the level of research on African higher education. The editors have gathered a fine group of relatively young as well as veteran scholars who have come together to offer perspectives on the uptake of research in South Africa. I like that early chapters of this book offer rich and nuanced information on the historical perspectives of research on higher education, institutional research, and research utilization. Indeed, research helps inform our future decision-making and practice. The communication of our research through publication is a critical way that we share the fruits of our knowledge and our labor. The detailed bibliometric study included in this book is rigorously structured and reveals the growth in South Africa's research. It affirms the growing body of knowledge that is available. So take that, Tefera and Altbach. It is impressive that in 2018, there were almost 250,000 publications in the South Africa knowledge base, representing nearly 500,000 authors. Furthermore, in the decade from 2005 to 2015, and I'm sure even beyond then, publications increased steadily in the premier journal, South African Journal of Higher Education. One interesting chapter in this book presents a topical analysis of research on higher education. As such, future researchers can now easily locate what is currently available and can determine what topics are in greatest need of further interrogation. In another chapter, Heidi Przedski and colleagues focus on women's staff in higher education. We know that gender inequities still exist and that women in South African higher education occupy only about 1/3 of senior management positions, and women academic scholars produce only about 1/3 of the peer-reviewed publications. The detailed analysis provided in this chapter reminds us of the need for consistent and stronger policies to address gender inequity. Several chapters, 5 through 8, offer specific instances on the use of research, some specifically through IR, typically for institutional decision-making, and some through broader higher education research that might be used for larger national policy level formation. All of that is great. And while each of these chapters provides valued and insightful information, I thought the discussion in Prinsloo and Nati Bolong's chapter that determines the research agenda was especially compelling. They call it the master voice. These chapter authors remind us that research at any institution must be understood within the context, and yet there are political, social, technologic, and other contexts that affect research utilization. While I do agree that context is especially important, I suspect that a number of their findings apply broadly across institutions that engage in research. And their comments certainly resonate with my observations for the research enterprise at large R1 universities in the US. At the two institutions under study in this chapter, Prinsloo and Natibolong found that current funding constraints require or heavily push institutions to rely on external funding. And as such, that can lead to the commercialization of research. I'm reminded of Sheila Slaughter and Gary Rhodes' work on academic capitalism that offers some similar arguments. In higher education around the world, I agree with the authors that the increase in commercialization has interesting implications for claims on intellectual property and points to the increasing reality of, or perhaps the dominance of, the neoliberal discursive orientation. As we look to the future of research utilization, where are we headed? Indeed, as Botha, Hamwami, and Vilyte discuss in Chapter 10, there are a number of factors that determine research utilization, including stakeholder collaboration, the reputation and expertise of the research environment, and the production and distribution of research. Especially as we emerge out of the COVID-19 pandemic, there are or will be a number of voices and demands that affect the directions and level of research in the future. Perhaps we'll continue to find all of three of the discursive orientations, and I suspect we'll continue to see an increasing demand from within as well as from without the institution. Although challenges await, I believe that Botha, Vilyte, and colleagues would agree that the best way forward is through knowledge gained from research. Both higher education researchers and institutional researchers have much to contribute. They must possess deep knowledge of higher education broadly and must offer findings within the specific institutional context. In addition, I believe we must possess a variety of heightened technical and analytic skills. I believe that one particular area that calls for additional research is that of how to best use and manage the large volumes of data on our students, staff, and administration. I believe that big data and data analytics will play an increasing role in our data-informed decision-making. While institutional leaders are eager to use these data, important issues must be addressed related to data security, ethical and responsible use of the data, and how these data can best inform our policies and practices for student and institution success. And my hat's off to Paul Prinsloo and his colleagues for many good writings in this area. In our new world of large data and heightened analytics, many questions continue. How can we achieve a more diverse student body, greater student access? How can we best offer financial and academic assistance to our students? What's the right balance of in-person and distance education? What data offer a reliable and accurate picture of student learning and engagement? How do we best use these data to consider our instructional pedagogy? These are critical questions, and it seems important that higher education and IR researchers be central in the research and the subsequent discussions. The uptake of research should continue. Again, my congratulations to all colleagues who contributed to this book. It is an important contribution to the value, the benefits, and the need for research on higher education in South Africa today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Weber, for those exciting thoughts, food for thought. You have touched on a variety of relevant issues to higher education, South Africa, and the world. My immediate take home is your reference to Tefera and Hartberg call for a greater level of research on African higher education. This also links to the 2018 book by Kluter and Bunting of 8 African research universities, where they highlighted that capacity and resourcing to undertake institutional research was varied and in some cases constrained, which also links to another point that you raised on the cost of technology to undertake such research, handling big data. And I know in the case of the South African universities, there are some universities that struggle to even pay licenses for these modules to handle big data, which points to the differentiated nature of capacity in the sector to handle this work. I'm now going to hand over to Gabriele, the co-editor of the book, to further comment on what Karen has shared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gabriele?
Yes, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Yeah, so thank you so much, Karen, for agreeing to be part of the book launch, and thank you so much, Temwa, as well. Thank you, Karen, for the wonderful summary of the book, and indeed some thought-provoking reflections you just shared with us. So Karen noted Tefera and Albach's comments about the need for more research on African higher education. And it might be worth mentioning here that this book that we're discussing is in fact, in a way, a second part to another book by Jan Botha and colleagues released in 2016 called Institutional Research in South African Higher Education, Intersecting Contexts and Practices, also published by African Sun Media, which Karen was part of, actually. And indeed, what that book showed us was that a lot of the time there is this communication gap between university academic staff and institutional researchers. And it further highlighted the much bigger problem, or perhaps the complexity of the gap between research and policy or practice, which is really an issue in many disciplines today. But this finding really birthed the questions that this subsequent book tries to answer. So what do we know about the utilization of South African research on higher education and institutional research? And if, how, and by whom is this research used? And as Karen noted, also who even determines the agenda of such research, as one of the chapters in the book discusses. So I think very accurately, Karen began with noting that since the comments of Albach and colleagues in 2004, we in South Africa have experienced multiple such revolutions. Indeed, what had a certain influence on the shape of this book were the student protests of 2015 and 2016. And of course, the elephant in the room, the current revolution, COVID, that has resulted in the massive shift towards online education, and is certainly to blame why most of us are sitting in our homes and kitchens, as some of us, and are not interacting face to face. I think, as Paul commented, one day when I grow up, I will have a nice library background like Karen and Jan. But I think for this book, the COVID revolution had a slightly different influence, in that a lot of us cooped up at home during lockdown finally found the time to actually finish this book. Although I think some other colleagues felt an increase in their workload, I think, working to help their institutions figure out how to move forward in this new normal. And I think this just illustrates that revolutions will always come and go, and they will certainly have their impact. But often the crux of the matter remains: how do we use information to move forward? How do we use information to come up with solutions to the problems that these types of events put in the spotlight? And this is really the essence of this book. So with this book, we really try, for the first time, as far as I know, to look at how this process plays out in South African higher education, and also try and lay the groundwork for further research on the utilization of South African research on higher education and institutional research. And I think Karen and Temwa as well have given us all quite a few ideas on where such future research can and should take us.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle, for those inputs. Without any waste of time, I'd like to open the session for comments and any questions that the participants might have. I've also noted that we've got most of the co-authors on the floor, so please feel free to add. Any questions or additions? Lerato, please come in.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just would like to really congratulate Prof Jan Botha and team on this excellent job of creating a book. It's not a child's play, and I know some of the hurdles that they went through to finally be here. I really want to congratulate them, and indeed it's a continuation from the first one, and I can't wait to lay my hands on it. Yeah, it's just that a congratulatory message, and I really appreciate the presence of Prof Jan Botha. Thank you.
Thank you, Lerato. Professor
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Temwa. Thanks, everyone. Thanks also to Karen. Just also from my side, I think publishing a book during revolutionary times took an extra energy, extra patience, extra, I don't know what, from Jan as well as Gabrielle. And I really appreciate your leadership, your kindness, your support, and above all, your passion for publishing this book. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Gabrielle. And thanks, Karen.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Paul. Professor Sue McKenna is coming.
Hi, everyone, and yeah, I'd like to echo the congratulations to you all. I've got a bit of a question, and maybe it's just something that's been troubling me, and I'm not sure whether it's something that the people who've put this book together might be able to address, because it really is about the utilization of institutional research. Is that I suspect that institutional research seems to happen be undertaken by completely different actors and draw on completely different theories to the research that's undertaken by academic development and teaching and learning, and if I can be hopefully not insulting, but there's a tendency of some institutional planners and so on to be so focused on the numbers, on the metrics, that it's often quite a-theoretical. What do we do to try and make sure that we're actually undertaking research that speaks across institutional planning and academic development and that we're not actually like having our own conferences and publishing our, and that's, by the way, one of the strengths of this book, I think, is exactly that it is a move in that exact direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue, for that. And just to add, I think the last chapter of the book also makes an argument for that institutional researchers and higher education researchers often work in different worlds, and there's a need for them to work together to enhance their work. Herman Fisser, please come in.
Thank you. I just want to echo some of the congratulations and the thank yous raised by Paul and others about specifically to Jan in his absence, and we all wish that he will be well soon again. And Gabriele, I think they've held our hands quite nicely in this whole process and worked with us through a very difficult and challenging time. But I think I will also neglect if I say that it wasn't a nice experience. And Temwa, specifically, I worked with you, so I would specifically like to single out that working with you, we've talked about that before, was actually a great experience. And I wish you also well with the rest of your career in research. Thank you.
Wow, Herman. Yeah, yes, we are out of time now. Prof, you can come in if you wanted to say something.
Yeah, Temwa, if I may come in quickly, just on a quick response on Sue's comment about the IR researchers being different actors, not necessarily working with theories explicitly. That is very true, and that was indeed one of the prompters of this whole project. But I also want to add to that it cut both ways. To quite a significant extent, academic researchers tend not to sufficiently collaborate or take note of the work done by institutional researchers. And sometimes academic researchers are very strong in theory and less so in the making their hands dirty, working with the detail as the IR people. So that trying to bridge that gap, that was indeed from the beginning a serious prompter. If I may, Chair, just 3 short comments overall from me. I do want to again emphasize and thank and honor Chrissy Bowie. The book is dedicated to her, as she's really a role model for us as an intellectual, a scholar, and a practitioner. Thanks, and Chrissy, it's an honor for us that we can honor you with a book. Secondly, short one comment. I do think, Mr. Chair, that the utilization of South African research is actually, we have more reason for optimism than we thought initially. We thought a lot of that just end on the shelves. It's not going anywhere. But now in this book and the studies, we have some serious evidence that it is in fact used. So that is nice and good to know. On the other hand, this gap that Sue talked about, indeed it exists, and I think we need to do a lot to enhance our collaboration, to overcome our silos, to understand that it is a multi-directional effort, and then finally, trying to understand higher education globally and specifically in African context is an exciting endeavor, and it's wonderful to be part of that. But it doesn't end at the understanding, and there I also want to honor people like Nasimo, who's present today, and many others, and also our international people present today, Rick Voorhees and Karen, of course, one of the leading figures in the United States. Understanding is important, and it's complex enough, but we need to go beyond and say what for. So there's still a lot of work to do. What is higher education for in our context? How, if we understand it better, what then? What next? And so the work is exciting, and there's wonderful things ahead. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Jan, for those words. And if I may add, I think Jan and Gabriele also unpack the issues which he has unpacked now in the last chapter. Just with the parting words, so perhaps a way forward is for future research to further interrogate what is at play, the mechanisms which are at play, the processes and practices and relationship dynamics with regard to research utilization. And as we go forward in South Africa, as we face problems such as curriculum and pedagogy practices, which are in some cases problematic, the ever elusive access and success challenges in the sector, the racially skewed staffing and student shapes, the aging academics, persistence of low participation rates, which are also racially skewed, and lastly, the biggest problem, the ever decreasing financial resources, which are continually competing with ever increasing needs, demands from universities. I think institutional research has got a key role to play. And as we move into the new year on the back foot of the COVID-19 constraints, government and universities have to once again grapple with the issue of fee increases in the next year. The state and universities have to answer the difficult question of how much should be the increase for universities to stay afloat, but also considering implications of these decisions on access, which is what Professor Weber has beautifully captured in the keynote address. Colleagues, we've come at the end of the session. Apologies for going a bit over. The book is available in the links provided in the chat. Hard copies are also available on various platforms, including the African Sun Media Store. Thank you all, and a special thank you to all to our keynote speaker and all the participants and everybody that made this book launch possible. And that is including the colleagues at SAAIR and University of Free State. Thank you and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you again, Temwa. You've done a great job chairing the session, and thank you to you and to Gabriele. And of course, my best wishes, Jan, with everything coming up. Please keep in touch.
Thank you, Karen, for those words. It was really an exciting process for me. Thank you very much. All the best. Thank you so much.
All right, very best to you, and perhaps you can find some funding from your institution and come to the AIR forum either in 22 or 23. I hope to see you there.
That sounds like a plan. Thank you. Take care.
All right. Very best wishes with the rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much,
right.
Karen and Temwa.
Thank you, Gabriele.
I'll sign off now. Tthanks so much.
Bye.